Hi, Sandra here from Create in Spain. Please forgive any mistakes on the video. I'm trying to do a video in my craft room today with my camera rather than doing a screencast, and I don't find it the easiest of things to do because my desk is not really set up the correct way for this, but there we go. Today I thought I'd discuss borders. May veer into other things, but borders are what are on my mind at the moment. I have some borders here, and these are ones I designed myself recently, and there's a set of 5. If you want some borders, I've got them on my website, on my blog, in the design shop, and a set of 5 borders is $1.50, which, considering the time it takes to do them, I think is pretty good. Anyway, regardless of whether you want my borders or not, maybe you've got your own borders but you're a bit bored of them. Now, there are other things that you can do to them apart from trying to alter the files. You can give them different looks. Now, obviously you might cut things out of different colour cards and things, give it a different look that way. But sometimes you want something maybe a little different or a little more subtle. So I'm going to show you a couple of tips that I have. I have here some Reeves iridescent medium. And this is a 200ml tube. This would probably, unless you paint large areas, last you a lifetime. And it cost me something like €6, so it's not very expensive for an enormous great tube like that. You don't need much of it. It's very useful stuff because you can mix it with all sorts of other paints. You can mix it with watercolour paints, you can mix it with acrylic paint, and it makes it all nicely iridescent. If I show you this piece of scrap paper here, I have 2 swatches. The one on the left was iridescent medium mixed with some water, quite a lot of iridescent medium to water. I had quite a good squeeze of medium in there. This one, I mixed a tiny amount of iridescent medium with some alcohol, and I'll tell you why later. And as you can see, it's a much more subtle effect. This one is really full-on iridescent bling. This one's more subtle because it has less iridescent particles in it. So this is the one that I've mixed up, which is mixed up with water. And as you can see, it's a bit, I suppose it's like a thick milk consistency. And it doesn't look particularly inspiring, but that is the effect that it gives. And here I have the one which I mixed up with some alcohol, much runnier. It's probably going slightly pink because I think I had the remnants of some pink paint in the bottom, but take no notice of that. Actually, it might be coming out of the brush. But this one is the one that gave the other swatch. So one alternative for your borders is simply to make them nicely iridescent. And it's a nice subtle effect. So we'll put that one to one side to dry off. Now, I mentioned mixing with alcohol, and the reason I mention that is because alcohol evaporates quicker than water does. So if you have a paper which isn't very water friendly, maybe it soaks up far too much, then using alcohol may be a way to do it. All I do is I just buy medical alcohol and I use that. It's cheap and it does the job. And I don't drink alcohol, so I don't have things like gin or whatever around. I believe gin's probably dearer, so maybe it wouldn't be a good idea to use it. So that's that thing that you can do. The other thing that you could do is to actually use it with a paint and mix it and paint it. These are Winsor & Newton watercolours, so they're actually decent paints. But you could actually just buy a very small, cheap palette of children's watercolours, and that would do just as well. The other thing that you can do, I'll put my brush down, is you can get some cheap eyeshadows. And the only reason these have been used, believe me, is because of artwork. I don't wear the stuff. So if I take a plain piece of border, and all I tend to do is stick my finger in it, so I'm going to go for a pale pink and rub it quite hard on there. It's quite a nice subtle effect. And okay, I'm going to go for a really deep pink on the outsides. I mean, you could get the kids to do this because this is just play. This is fun. But it does produce a very pretty effect. And it's just a little bit different. And it's quite quick to do. Now, if I'm going to use eyeshadow, like I have with that one, what I would do afterwards is I would line them up on an old piece of paper or a bin bag or something and just give them a spray with hairspray. It sets it. It's an old artist trick. Okay, this one is slightly bigger. It's a longer design. And what would I like to do to that? I think I'll just show you a little bit of watercolour. Now I have these brushes, they're made by Pentel, and they're, I think, aquash brushes or something like that. Basically, they're just a synthetic brush tip with a reservoir of water, and these are absolutely wonderful. Not only can you go out and about doing your watercolour painting without having to carry a whole load of kit, but they're really useful in the craft room as well. And I love them. Now, they don't put out lots and lots of water, it just makes it a little bit damp. So if I just put a little water over this piece here, I can then go to one of my colours and just start to drop some colour in. And you can get some very nice subtle effects doing this. And so you don't have to have any great artistic ability, and you don't have to spend a fortune on your paints. As I said, you could do this with any cheapo paints that you've got if they're water soluble without any problem at all. I just happen to have a good selection of watercolours. I've got loads of watercolours because I paint in watercolours, so I've got them. But not everyone does that, and I realised. Okay, so now we've got a bit of another colour going in. There we go. Alright, so again, it's another effect. If you make a paper slightly wet and you put colour into it, the colour will spread and blend. So that's a pretty subtle effect. I have a couple that I did earlier. And this one is one that I did with the eyeshadow in different colour scheme. And this one I did again with eyeshadows, just in this particular case I was brushing it on quite hard. And then I just took a gold pen and went around the holes in the design. And it gives it kind of like an oriental feel, so that's quite good fun. What else can you do? You can, if you happen to have them, I have lots of them. If you have 3D pens, for example, you could take your design, you could put blobs and patterns of 3D pens over it, wait for it to dry and then go over it with watercolour, and you'll have a resist, and that will also look very pretty. Okay, I hope you found this interesting. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.